The answer is the same in all three things, actually, which is, as we've heard, and many people use, but it's true. People over politics and policy over people. So sometimes I think what happens is we think about people over politics sometimes, but we don't think about that we need policy over certain politicians.
Basically, we are looking for neighbors to be neighbors, act like neighbors. And these programs that you've been talking about are people seeing those around them as their neighbors and caring about them as neighbors. So it's my great pleasure, and I mean that literally, to be talking with my good friend, Reverend Mary Downey, who is, as myself, has a background in United Methodist clergy, and she is the CEO of Hope Partnership, which is a ministry that deals with homelessness, and we'll get into more of the details of that. But in these podcasts where we're talking about the intersection of faith and politics, I can't think of anybody more at the center of things and of a greater tradition than Reverend Mary. And so thanks for being on with me. I love being in the same community as you and cooperating on not only things of the pledge, but larger community purposes. First of all, let's go biographical. Give me your background. Give me how in the world you ended up as a United Methodist minister, and how you became involved in social impact activities.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Hunter, for having me here. It's just an honor to share this space with you. That's a long, drawn-out question, and we only have 60 minutes.
Yeah.
So
That's right.
I'll try to give you the Cliff Notes version of that. I actually grew up in South Arkansas, in the Southern Baptist tradition, actually, and discerned my call to ministry when I was about 12 years old.
Wow.
And I went to my pastor at the time and tried to explain to him my deep calling. And as happens to a lot of women in ministry in that space and time, I was told, well, you have a pretty good singing voice, not a great one, but a pretty good singing voice. You should learn piano. I think you're called to marry a pastor, and you can sing specials in his church.
Oh my God.
I did try to learn piano. I did not succeed, as we can tell at that particular, what he thought that calling was. There was just a little bit of a limited scope of what we thought women could do and girls could do at the time. But I did grow up in that kind of space where women and girls weren't particularly valued for what they could do for God. And I also grew up in a pretty tough situation. I grew up in a household that was pretty disruptive. I had dealt with a lot of poverty and a lot of domestic violence. And so that really shaped who I was, and I found a lot of my solace in the church and in my relationship with Jesus. And so how I got here is just a lot of things that happened along the way of, I always say, a deep obedience. I don't even necessarily call it faithfulness, just the act of constant obedience to God's call, and to continue to be curious about that call, and to follow it even when it shifts and changes. And so my husband and I, we grew up together in South Arkansas. He's known me since I was 7, 8 years old. We don't remember each other until 3rd grade.
Wow.
But we've known each other all of our life. We started dating when I was in college, and we moved to Central Florida in 2006. Right before then, I pretty much discerned my call into ministry in the United Methodist Church. Martin, my husband, and I had gotten married in 2004, right after we graduated, and then we went to graduate school. And around the same time, Martin grew up Methodist. He's a lifelong Methodist, cradle Methodist. Started going to church with him. And my pastor of that church at the time said to me, "Hey, Mary, you're a pretty good public speaker. just curious, here in the Methodist Church and these kind of rural churches, we can't take vacation. And so I was just wondering, would you go to this training for me so that when I go on vacation, I have someone who can fill in the pulpit? And I was like, sure, I'll do this favor for you. That's no big deal. I like to talk to people. I'm fine. I'm a journalism major, mass media, broadcast. I can talk all day long. No problem. Never had any training in ministry. I spent a year at Bible college and then transferred out of that. But said yes, went to this training, got there. The training was done by one of my college professors, and he was like, hey, you're pretty good at this. Why don't you stay so that if other pastors in the district need somebody to fill in, if you do this additional training, then you can be licensed to do that. And I'm like, sure, no problem. I can do that, no big deal. A week after that training, the pastor of my hometown, itty bitty place in Arkansas, 200 people, the pastor of the United Methodist Church there had a heart attack, and he died. And the church had no one to fill in. And so at 21 years old, I had a congregation.
Oh, my goodness.
And that is where my call started.
Wow.
At Center Grove United Methodist Church in Okolona, Arkansas, teeny tiny little congregation, most gracious little church. Who knows what I preached to them? Yeah. I actually went back recently and preached for them. And I was like, guys, I'm so sorry. What did I know? What could I have said to you? I had not gone to seminary, no training whatsoever. But they were like, no, you were always wonderful. And so I was like, oh, well, okay, I see now that women can be in ministry in the church, in the United Methodist Church, and this is wonderful. And so my district superintendent, as you're familiar with how all that sets up in the Methodist world, he kept saying like, oh, I think you should, go to licensed local pastor training. We really want to put you here permanently. And I had said to him, listen, I'm really honored, but I don't think this is how I'm called at all. I don't see myself as a senior pastor. It just doesn't, I know I'm called to ministry, but it doesn't feel right. But I'll tell you what, I'll make a deal with you. My husband is currently interviewing at a very small production house in Kissimmee, Florida. And if he doesn't get the job, then, I'm just going to kind of take that as like, okay, this is the path that we're supposed to be on. I'll look into getting a licensed local pastor, go to seminary, do the thing. And Martin got the job. And so we did what so many people in Central Florida have done. We packed up everything that we owned in one, not even like a real U-Haul. It was just one that attached to the truck. It wasn't even like, didn't even have enough to have the full thing. Rented a teeny tiny apartment on Dyer Avenue or Dyer Boulevard in Kissimmee, and started our life here.
I love it.
And so that's how we got here. And I thought, okay, well, that means I'm not supposed to be in ministry. I'm going to continue looking at broadcast, doing all that. We were here a week and a half, I think, when I walked into the United Methodist Church in downtown Kissimmee. I said, hey, guys, I'm new to the community. What time is your worship time? The accountant was the person who talked to me. I came in around 1 o'clock. People weren't back from lunch yet. She looks at me. It was total God thing because this woman is an incredible introvert. She doesn't take risk now that I know her. And she just looks at me and she says, are you looking for a job? And I said, I am.
Oh my goodness.
And that is how it started.
Oh my goodness.
Yep.
I'm listening to this story, and first of all, if those of us with memories have to wince often, not only at the cultures in which we grew up. Becky often says, when I grew up as a girl, the girls had two choices. They could be nurses or teachers. That was their only two choices. And so I wince at the constrictions that have been placed in various times in history on people simply because of their category. But I'm always enamored with people who are willing to step out of the boundaries, and explore what God has for them. Tell me, let's remain on the personal just for a minute before we get to the social. What gave you the heart to really care about people kind of beyond your family, beyond your, most people are busy taking care of their family, getting a job, showing up for, What gave you the heart to care more broadly about people? Because I see your ministry today, and it's so wonderful and so admirable. And there's just a special gear of compassion that you have, Mary, that is something that is just not usual. How did that happen?
Oh, I mean, I think that's just how God made me.
Okay.
I think I have always been able to identify and see where people have deep hurt and brokenness.
Mhm.
And perhaps it's because as a person who experienced deep hurt and brokenness myself, and knowing I always use the word like moxie because I don't
Mhm.
really know what other word to
Yeah,
but just like this
it's a good word.
tenacity, this persistence that I was just born with. I'm just this way. Bless my mama's heart. I'm defiant to a fault sometimes when I see an injustice happening. And so I would recognize it and I would see it. And I would just know that it was unfair and it was wrong.
Mhm.
And even though I often felt many, many times very powerless,
Yeah.
very very voiceless at times, obviously, definitely in a culture that, if you were a woman who spoke out, you were a heretic in some ways. And so when I recognized that there were even people that it was even worse for them than it was
Mhm.
for me, that
Mhm.
their plight and the things they were trying to overcome. And I've always known that if you have any type of privilege, it's to give away.
Yeah.
It's
Good.
to hand that away. And
Yeah.
so that's always been a part of me in my story. Growing up, I don't know that I always was brave enough to use it. And it was, courage, I think is a muscle that we have to practice.
Mm.
And so, I think for me, as I've grown older, as I've stepped out into the world more, as I've understood more and more where my power and privilege lies, I don't ever want to hold it for myself.
Mhm.
It's not for me, it's for all of us.
Yeah. Let's go to the faith tradition out of which you come. Just got done with David Swanson, who's Reformed. They have a great faith tradition with Calvin and Jonathan Edwards and Abraham Kuyper and so on and so forth. Theologically, though, in the Methodist Church, and I'm familiar with this as well, there has been always a special gear for those who were not included, all the way from, going from the traditional church into the preaching to the minors, and so there's always been that kind of social aspect to our tradition. How have you, both as a pastor and as a CEO, tried to help people in their involvement in the social well-being of their city? Not just resourcing them for a better life for themselves, but counseling them or guiding them into investing in the well-being of the city.
Well, we as United Methodists, we do have this long history of social holiness, right? And that is actually what brought me into the United Methodist Church. That's why I decided to come into it, even though it was my husband's tradition. If it had not been a good fit, we probably would have stuck into something else.
Mm-hmm.
But it was the social principles of the United Methodist Church that really struck me, because they had done all this work to identify areas of oppression and areas of injustices. And my gosh, they printed a book about it.
Yeah.
And if you're a United Methodist, you can order the book of social principles, and you can see like this is exactly where we stand.
Yep.
And for me, that was new. I had not seen that in the tradition that I had. And so, first of all, just knowing that I was in a tradition that prioritized that. And so I think that when you think about your faith, I think that for me, I often, I don't know how deep theologically you want to go into like semantics of things, but I do think about atonement theory.
Mm-hmm.
I think about what it actually means to be at one
Mm-hmm.
with God, with Spirit, with Jesus. And And to me, that atonement theory really sets in moral exemplar. It sets in the example that Jesus Christ gave us. And so when I talk to people and I talk about our community and what that means, the first thing I want to talk about is the dignity that Jesus gave us.
Yeah.
The dignity that Jesus gave and showed us in how he interacted with every single person that he interacted with. And that is actually where I start always I always talk about, it's not about people's brokenness. There's some really good, especially around poverty work, there's some really good books out there that talk about poverty alleviation and how to do this work. But I always struggle with them, especially as a Wesleyan, because they, in my opinion, they start at brokenness. They start at the idea that you and I both come to the cross broken, and we need Jesus's healing, which theologically there is room for that. Mm-hmm. And you and I come to the world made in the image of God. And so not in our brokenness do we find belovedness. It is in that imago Dei that we have together that brings it. It is in the belovedness that we enter into this world together. And so that's where I kind of sit in those conversations, reminding people, especially when you're dealing with people who are very different, very easy for you to other, very easy for you to think that their poverty or their homelessness or whatever it may be is a result of moral failing, as opposed to it being a result of all of our moral failing.
You're very unusual in that, in a good way.
Depends on who you ask.
but you've not only been spiritual leader of a congregation and now the organizational and spiritual leader of a terrific ministry to those who are struggling. And I want you to describe for us a little bit about Hope Partnership and what you do. But you're now actually a candidate for public office. And so you're the perfect one to interview about this. Tell us first how you helped people in your congregation be involved without getting entangled in the political process. Secondly, how you help people in your organization to pay attention to policies that will be more helpful than less helpful, or how you get involved as an organization, not just in direct ministry, but also in policy formation. And then third, this is too long a question, but you're smart, and and then third, what in the world made you decide to run for public office?
Yeah.
So just lay it on us here.
Well, the answer is the same in all three things, actually, which is, as we've heard, and many people use, but it's true, people over politics and policy over people. So sometimes I think what happens is we think about people over politics sometimes, but we don't think about that we need policy over certain politicians. And so when I'm having conversations with people who are in the church who are trying to discern how they should vote or what they should do, I'm not going to talk to them about who they should and shouldn't vote for. I think that if you explain policy to people and how certain policies affect other people and how that relates to what we are called to spiritually to be called to address, that is helpful for people. I think that when we get too, and I think it is where we are right now, when we get too attached to a person, we lose the ability to discern what policy is. And so as an organization, public policy, I mean, we have a director of public policy on our org, even though we're quite small. And good luck finding somebody who wants to fund that. It's pretty impossible, but it's necessary. Because I get to talk to people who are dealing with the very worst things every single day of their life. And we also don't ever say, like, we're a voice for the voiceless. That's not a thing that we like. But what we do want to do is hand a megaphone to people. And so if I have the opportunity to hear firsthand what's happening with somebody because their insurance premiums have increased so much that they're not able to afford their insurance anymore, and it's affecting, there's a ripple effect that happens. I'm able to take that knowledge and influence policy, to share with the media, with other politicians, with political activists who are on the ground in other spaces who might never hear from this person who is experiencing this firsthand. We get to do that every single day at Hope Partnership because we're constantly trying to find out why people are experiencing what they're experiencing.
Tell us a little bit more about Hope Partnership.
Yeah, so Hope Partnership's goal as an organization is to make sure everyone has a safe place to call home. We say it that way because we do a lot. As an organization, we are about 15 years old. I'm the founder. It's been one of the biggest blessings of my life to lead this work, in which really centered on the dignity of the people that we are working with, not just to meet the basic needs, important and necessary, but also to figure out why someone is experiencing poverty, why they're experiencing homelessness, and do the work of being able to figure out how we can address that as well. And so for us as an organization, that means that we have just a very comprehensive and robust strategy everywhere from a weekly feeding program all the way up to providing. We just opened up, as you probably know, 33 studio apartments. That was a hotel conversion that we just finished as an organization. So all the way up to housing, IDs in between, connecting people to healthcare, connecting them to getting to jobs, whatever it might be. Whatever, I like to say that as an organization, we want to work with the person to identify the individual barriers that are perpetuating their homelessness and poverty, and we also want to identify the systemic barriers that is doing that as well, and inform each other. Because people who are often in trauma and experiencing these firsthand, it's very easy for them to take all the blame on themselves and to think they have made poor choices, and society likes to add on to that as well. And so if we can help the people that are experiencing it to understand, no, some of this is systemic. Some of this is just the injustices of the world that you are feeling the effects of. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't people who are also making some individual choices that need to shift and change. And it's also helpful for people who have never experienced that life. If you've never walked in the shoes of what it feels like to not have a safe place to call home, it's very, very easy for you to immediately think that it is all about poor choices, which is where we are right now in a lot of spaces, especially around policy.
Yeah.
Policy right now is very much shifting to moral failure being the reason why people are experiencing poverty and homelessness. And that is just simply not true. And so we have to be engaged at the policy side if we're going to do anything to help people who are experiencing it.
That's what you're saying, Mary, is just so positive and wonderful, and anyone with a heart for people are going, oh, this is so good. But all of us who have been involved in the public square know that for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. For every positive, there's a group of negatives that you kind of have to overcome or you have to address. And what we're dealing right now with in our culture, in our country, is the radicalization of polarization. I mean, and more divisiveness, more and more blame, more and more accusation, more and more animosity. How do you deal with that?
Well, I think, first of all, to answer your third question, it answers this question, which is, they say that to help overcome that kind of thing, we need good people to run for office. People who are not so polarized. It is easy to get in an echo chamber. It's easy. It's easy to do that. It is hard to come out and split the difference and to continue to have the conversations that you're having with the pledge and other people are having who are passionate about this work, because it does cost us something. It does. It's not an easy plight to be able to continue to engage when you do at times want to shut down, when you do want to. I mean, I understand some of the Psalms better than I've ever understood them in the past. I have to tell you, sometimes you just want to read those ones where David's like, smite my enemies, Lord. I mean, I understand what he was feeling, but also, we have this great history of knowing that anything worth fighting for you're going to find the strength to do it. Um, and so some days are better than others. I mean, I will not sit here and tell you that every day I go to work as a cheerleader. Some days I go to work very sad and very disenchanted with what I see and what we deal with on the every single day. And it is hard. It's not easy.
When we talk about not only being involved in the public square and the issues and the process of trying to eke out policy, and that sometimes comes with compromise, which these days is a dirty word, but has always been at least giving some people some of what they want or need. And these days it's kind of like a zero-sum game. There has to be winners and losers, and we're going to be the winners. And what skills do you think people need to have, especially in this culture, in order to have more reconciling conversations?
Oh, it's a hard question. I mean, I think, and this has also seemed like a dirty word to some people now, but I think empathy is your first step.
Mm-hmm.
If you cannot see the other person across from you as a person, we're not going to get anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
That's not feasible.
Mm-hmm.
And so there has to be some willingness to open up one's eyes to see the belovedness in the person that we're talking about, that there are real people behind policy, and to understand what that looks like. So I think that's a must. I have been very blessed to be a part of Gary Mason's team in both going to Belfast as a young leader, and also we got a chance to go to Israel and spend time there, and learn so much about peace and reconciliation work and what that looks like. And I think in every single instance, when it's been done well, it's been done when people were willing to open up their eyes enough to see who's standing in front of them.
Yeah. She's referring to a leader, another Methodist minister, but also a leader in an organization called Rethinking Conflict. And Mark and I just got back a couple of weeks ago from Belfast. And the Good Friday Agreement was really an example of overcoming decades of hate and violence into a much more humane conversation by treating people as people and seeing them as people. And so, well, let me ask you this, now that you've brought that up. Do you think that the culture that is building right now is, and I realize you're still young, but as you look past history, I often get asked this question. I was part of the civil rights movement in the 60s, and people ask me, do you think it's worse than it ever was? Or do you think it's basically, this is just how we do stuff? What's your read on the culture right now?
Well, I am, I don't have that breadth of experience, that you do in regards to the civil rights movement. And, we can learn from people who were in those spaces. And so do I think it's worse than it was? I think it depends on who you are. I mean, I think our Black and brown brothers and sisters would have a very different answer about what that means for them, because the world has been like this in those spaces for a long time, right? And so I think that that's a very individualistic question for the person and their experiences of culture. I grew up in the 90s. From all I can tell, the 90s were the golden age. I don't know.
They're looking better and better.
Do I think that there were some things happening in the 90s politically that were probably bonkers? Yes. And also, it's when the Good Friday Agreement happened. It's a time when people were able to come together. We had a Congress that still talked to each other during that time.
Yes.
I remember, I am so sorry. I cannot remember the name of the senator's name. Oh, his name has escaped me. But I was at a speech of his wife, and now I can't remember. But he was a Democrat, Florida Democrat. Now he works at the Space Coast. Maybe you'll remember who
Nelson.
he is. Yes, Bill Nelson. Thank you so much. I was at a speech for his wife, and she was talking about how in the 90s they would have debate on the floor, and then they would go to dinner.
Yeah,
exactly. And they would still be collegial to one another and care for one another, and that I don't see that happening.
Yeah,
and I don't understand that, honestly, as a person who is just naturally diplomatic, who naturally wants to bring around reconciliation. I don't believe in a zero-sum game at all. I believe that we all get to win.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't have an understanding where anyone could think otherwise.
Yeah.
And so when I think about, is this the worst that it's ever been? I mean, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. What I do know is that it's not good.
Yeah.
It's not how it has been. We can do better than what we are doing right now because we have already experienced that. Don't make me preach.
What's that? Oh, come on. We need it. Let's kind of contextualize where you are right now. The Central Florida Pledge is basically focused on 3 counties: Seminole, Orange, and Osceola. Very different contexts, very different populations, different issues. Help us understand the struggles that are very pertinent and very challenging in Osceola that may be unique to Osceola County.
Yeah, I think the thing for Osceola County that we have struggled with for quite some time, and I think are finally starting to reckon with, is just our rapid growth. I hear sometimes, and I am all Osceola all the time, so I could be wrong about this, but I hear people say like that, in Orange County there isn't really a lot of space for more growth. But in Osceola, we still have a lot of land.
Yeah.
And so it's reckoning with the balance of people who want to come to Florida and want to live here, and a government that's in welcoming people into this community, right? The whole open for business, Florida's open for business.
Right.
People came to Osceola County when those things were going on. So it's reckoning with the fact that we have this rapid growth while also understanding that we have a lot of work to do to have the infrastructure to hold that growth.
Yes.
And it is a balance that this community, I think, is at least 10 years behind on. By, in my opinion, no fault of their own. We had a pandemic in the middle of that. There's a lot of factors at play. And so when I look at Osceola, I look at the fact that we are desperately trying to play catch up. The other thing that Osceola County is kind of known for is this idea of that we have an industry that is rooted solely in hospitality and tourism. And hospitality and tourism is a wonderful industry. It is the industry that brought me to this community, right? It is the industry that so many of us work in. And it is an industry that I think in a lot of ways has done a lot to try to help the people that are working in it.
Yeah.
I get to be on the front hand conversations with some of our largest tourism leaders, and I see how they are trying to be a part of the solution. I think about the fact that both Walt Disney World and Universal Studios both built affordable housing. What a gift. That's just amazing to me. And the fact that, those things are happening is really wonderful. But no community can survive on one industry alone. That's how we've seen other communities completely dry up.
Yeah.
Is that when you don't have a diversified industry structure, you're going to, at one point or another, going to have some kind of burst.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I love about what Osceola is doing is our initiative around NeoCity and stepping in this idea of semiconductor technology and being the leader in the country when it comes to this type of different industry that's rooted in STEM and the wonderful things we've done to try to boost that up. One of the best things that Osceola County is doing right now that I am so excited about, and especially based on my background, is that our county commissioners initiated a program called Osceola Prosper. Are you familiar with Prosper at all?
No.
It is the best thing we are doing in Central Florida.
Tell us
100%. Every single graduating student in Osceola County can go to Valencia Community. My bad. I'm going to say that again because I don't want to get their name wrong.
Yeah.
Every single graduating senior in Osceola County can go to Valencia Community College for free if they would like.
Wow.
It is in the county budget.
That's awesome.
Osceola County understood that they were number 63 out of 67 counties when it came to students going to secondary education. And they looked around and they said, what can we do to change this?
Wow.
Last year, we were number 3.
Wow.
That's how much it has changed. I'm a first-generation college student, first one in my family to ever graduate from college. What we learned in Osceola County with this program is that actually there were lots of students that they qualified to go to school anyway. They didn't need extra support from the county. They didn't need other things. Their grades were good enough. They might already have the financial support from Pell Grants and things like that. But because college seemed so out of reach for them, they didn't even try.
Wow.
And so when Osceola County said, you can go to Valencia for free, all of a sudden the doors opened wide.
That's awesome.
And so it actually has cost the county less than they thought because it is the last dollars in. So they encourage you to apply for other scholarships, do your FAFSA, see if you can get a Pell Grant, those type of things. If none of those things work out, they're still going to cover your tuition.
That's awesome.
So you at least get a 2-year. So that's one way like that they're thinking forward.
Yeah.
And so that's really incredibly exciting to me.
Yeah.
Because that is, when you think about poverty alleviation, one of the main ways to address poverty alleviation is education.
Absolutely. All right, let me bring it back home here and kind of wind up with this. We started out in the faith tradition, especially United Methodist faith tradition, and the great commandment of Jesus was love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul, mind and strength, and your neighbor as yourself. Those two sum up the whole law. Basically, we are looking for neighbors to be neighbors, act like neighbors. And these programs that you've been talking about are people seeing those around them as their neighbors and caring about them as neighbors. What are a couple of things we can do to reimagine our communities as our neighbors?
Yeah, so I am going to talk about that scripture a little bit because I think there's a really important part of that scripture that we often don't talk about. And I think it's the part where we say as yourself. I think theologically, in lots of traditions, we have gotten to the point where we have forgotten that there is any belovedness in us. And so we have taught people in lots of faith traditions to deny themselves, which is a scripture, deny yourself and take up your cross. But in that denying of oneself, I think we forgot to love ourselves. And so I think it's almost impossible to love your neighbor if you can't find the ability to love yourself. And if when every time you walk into a faith tradition, the only story that you're hearing is how broken you are, how sinful you are, how bad you are, how can you possibly think outside of anybody else as your neighbor. And so I think we have to, and I know people are going to, I hear it, I know, oh, she's so soft. You can't just walk around loving everybody. Actually, yes, you can.
Yeah, absolutely.
Actually, if Jesus is love and the representation of love, then actually none of that's hard.
Yeah.
And so I think that we have forgotten to remind people that love is actually real and important, and that you can actually deny yourself and take up your cross, but not abandon yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that we have a lot of traditions where that fear and that hate has taken hold.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think until we have, Lord help me for saying this, but until we have some kind of revival that reminds people that like they can be loved, I don't know how we'll teach them to love their neighbor as themselves, because they can't.
Well,
Didn't get that.
Oh,
Could you try again?
Me either, Siri. Me either. Jesus. Sorry.
Siri. We needed a little note of levity there.
Oh gosh, and I don't often talk like that, but I think it's so important, because I see so many people who have been told that they are so broke and they are so bad.
Well, and what you're doing, Reverend Mary, is you're helping them. It's difficult for people to love themselves out of looking in the mirror and say, you're worth something. But when somebody else sees value in them, when somebody else looks at them and says to them, no, you are worthy of love. God loves you, and you are the vessel of God's love to them. That's where they go. They can start to believe, maybe I am. So what you're doing and who you've been in this community, who you continue to be, is just of utmost value, both in a heavenly and an earthly way. So thank you, Mary, for what you're doing.
And thank you, and thanks for always leading the charge and helping us have these incredibly important conversations. It's an honor to be here with you.
Thank you.